Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Start Marketing Podcast. This is Joe Sanders again. Thanks for joining us. This is a podcast that helps people who are looking for help with their digital marketing channels to develop marketing strategies and the correct way to do marketing. We always like to say around here, you need to stop posting and start marketing. That's also the name of a best-selling book that I wrote that you can find on Amazon. Please check out our other episodes as well as subscribe to our podcast. As I do in every episode of our podcast, I want to break down the 5 steps that we use when developing a marketing strategy. That is to find the right audience, create the right content, promote your business as a brand, use ample resources, and analyze the results. That's our 5-step process that really will help you be successful when doing digital marketing. We have episodes about that as well as other interesting topics like the one we're going to talk about today, which is going to be centered around UX. Now, if you don't know what UX is, you're in the right place. With us today, we have John Duda, who's an expert at this. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Today we're going to talk about UX. So John, I'm not even going to give an intro or anything. I would like you to go ahead and just John's pretty impressive. So John, would you mind just telling everybody what it is you do and then what exactly is UX and why is that important when I'm doing digital marketing?
Wow. And how much time we got?
Give me the Reader's Digest version.
All right. I'm going to go way back because UX, we all got here, and for the last several years, UX has been, everybody's talking about it, especially when Google says, hey, UX is going to be front and center in terms of making our decision, and the whole EAT model and SEO, right? Expertise, authoritativeness, trust. That is all part of UX. But sadly, 10, 15, definitely 20 years ago, nobody even knew what the hell it was. So I was actually doing my master's thesis at IIT at the usability at the Institute of Design, and we got into usability testing, and this was very, very, very like late 1998, 99, when nobody even knew what the hell it was, and it was basically pushing user-centered design and usability testing, right? Remember the web was in its absolute infancy, and the HTML is just an idea that just came out, and people were just basically slowly kind of pushing it out there. And so I was finishing up my master's, and I started my PhD, and I was teaching a class, and on usability, and it was in 99 exactly. And one of my students came to me and said, I just got a job at Bank of America, right? And I'm like, wow, that's cool. Doing what? He's like, well, your usability class, I'm going to be doing usability over there. I was like, wow. So here's me thinking, I was a consultant at that point going, well, maybe I should get them as a client. Long story short, I went to talk to them. They loved everything I had to hear, but they wanted me full time. And so this was early 2000. Remember the .com bubble? They would pay monkeys hundreds of dollars to turn a computer on. Yeah. So usability was a keyword. But the problem was when I got into Bank of America, the people that hired me knew what it was, but everybody else who were the project managers had no clue on what it was, right? So really what it was those were the very, very early days. Yeah. On just trying to make usable designs, right? Yeah. Basically, task analysis. Why are you here? What are you trying to accomplish? How are you going to find it? So a lot of that came from the very beginning. But it was interesting. This didn't really get interesting until 2003 when nobody in the bank could find anything. They couldn't find any. They had these leaders' guides, participants' manuals, and pricing policies, and this and that. And it was just a mess. There was intranets all over the place. So we talked to this little company called Google. Remember, they were tiny back then. Yeah. And they said, here's an appliance. Here's the algorithm. Here's how you massage that algorithm. And here is what it's looking for. And then you can tell it what to look for with certain keywords and meta tags and all that. So it really kind of started from that area.
Interesting. So you said you have your PhD. Is that true?
No, I never. Bank of America threw so much money at me. I think I was like 3 classes short.
Can I still call you Dr. John?
No, it almost sounds fake.
Well, hey, no, that's really interesting. So for those of you listening are saying, okay, I still don't understand what this UX is. The user experience, guys. That's what this is about. It's about the user experience. And what this means is when somebody goes primarily to your website, right? What is the experience that they're going to get out of your website, out of your portal, your dashboard, and all these kinds of things? It is so important. Now, a lot of times in our podcast, we talk about how marketing is the complete equation. And that's why we always say stop posting, start marketing, because what I feel a lot of people do when it comes to marketing is they just post things out there and then they expect big things to happen. Well, the same thing is true when you're designing your website, or you're designing an e-store, or you're designing something, and you're saying, well, this is good enough. If somebody comes to my site, they should be able to figure this out. It is becoming so much more important to have guys like John on your team to help you make sure that you're designing the site is being designed in the way that will most positively impact the user and will most positively impact your business. So John, tell me how far is this spectrum? Let's say we have 2 companies. All right, let's say we have 2 companies that sell, I don't know, popcorn online, and one has a tremendously well-done user experience and one has a very poor one, all other things being equal in the market and ads and everything. How far is that spectrum from one being successful and one not for those 2 sites?
Massive. And it's getting further and further along. As a matter of fact, it's so important that Amazon a long time ago put a patent on one-click ordering. Nobody can do it. Amazon literally has a patent on one-click ordering. That means you just click it. You don't have to put in your credit card information. You say, I want it now, right? And they got this patent years ago. We're talking, I think, 15 years ago, if not more. And so we really don't. You see this in 2 ways. You know how they said, I don't know art, but I'll know it when I see it, or good design. Usability is kind of the same thing, only in its opposite. It's you don't see it unless you don't see it, meaning you get frustrated. And we've all done this. We're on Microsoft Word, or we're on this site, and you're like, how the hell do you do this? Or what? Any product. When you're sitting here going, I just want to save, I just want to print, I just want to insert whatever function to get a task done. And you're like, and you spend the next 4 or 5 minutes trying to figure out where the hell that button is or how that works. Now you understand it. And what has happening, especially now in the last year, people said, well, it's just my website. Well, guess what? In the last year, your website is your business now.
Yeah.
They can't come to you. They can't do this. Whatever reputation, however they view you, they only view you as what they see on the screen, nothing else.
Right.
And what has, we always joke around with this, that everybody these days online has ADHD, right?
Right.
The threshold for pain and frustration is getting lower and lower and lower. Wasn't it just last year they said that they did a study and they concluded that a goldfish has a wider attention span than a human being at this point?
You're kidding, really?
Exactly. We as human beings are. Where everything has to happen now, and it has to be easy. And if it don't, the frustration level goes. That's why after about 3 or 4 seconds, your frustration level sets to the peak, to the point where something that's minuscule and average all of a sudden turns into frustration. And then guess what? Your competitor is in the next tab over.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm reminded of the film. Do you remember the film The Social Network, which was about Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah.
It's a good, it's a David Fincher film. There's a scene in there where he's got all these kids in this room just coding just coding. And and I'm paraphrasing a little bit. One of the characters in the movie is questioning Zuckerberg, and he's saying, why are you doing this? Like the site's fine. Like you've got all these people. And he goes, absolutely. He goes, no. He goes, the one time somebody comes to our site and it doesn't work, you lose them forever.
Yeah.
And I think that's basically what you're saying. And if you think about that market in the social media world, back in the day when we had MySpace and we had Friendster, and some of these other things and that we had, I think a lot of times we look at the viability of a brand. We look at, like you mentioned, Amazon, right? Like we look at the viability and say, well, Amazon's just a great brand. Amazon's just this great company with these great customer service and all these things. But you know what? You know how much of that has to do with the user experience that Facebook gave and that Amazon gave? It really had to do, a lot of their success is really centered around their user experience that they gave their customers. I mean, there used to be so many places you could buy things online, like you mentioned the bubble, that when it burst, there was like eToys, remember? And there was like all these places, but Amazon's user experience was just far better than everybody else's. Now they were winning in a lot of other categories as well, but I don't think we should, I think we need to give credit to the Facebooks and the Amazons of the world who created these user experiences that they just don't fail. Like they very rarely do customers go to that site and they're not intuitive to figure out what they have to do in the next step. And I think a lot of that has to do with the user experience. Would you agree?
Even more so, because now they've created that, and guess what? By doing so, they just raised the bar that much higher for their competitors. And so how many times do you hear it? Why can't this site work like this? Why can't this work like that, right?
Yeah.
Apple is a perfect choice. I'm an Android person.
Me too. I'm an Android person too.
And wow, this is the biggest dichotomy there, because I personally think Android, for the group of people, is doing it better than Apple. I think Apple and its user experience went a little bit too easy. I think they dumbed stuff down a little bit too much. However, there's an audience for that. I mean, older people, my grandma, that like that, fantastic. But there are, remember, everybody growing up these days is tech savvy.
Yeah.
No one right now is grown up that's in their 30s and 40s has grown up without the internet.
Right.
Those days are gone. The expectation and the level is much higher than it was even 10 years ago. Much higher.
But okay, no, yeah, right on. I agree. I think most people in my world, outside of some of the members of my team, are Android people. I find that older people use Android because I think it's just easier to use. That's probably a whole nother episode. Anyway. Hey, I want to ask you a question though. We're talking a lot today about Bank of America. We're talking about Facebook. We're talking about Amazon. What about like mid-level companies or even small businesses when they're developing a website? Now, obviously, they're not spending millions and millions of dollars, or even even tens of thousands of dollars designing a website. Maybe they're selling things online. How does somebody like that get the benefit of now that they know what these two letters UX stand for? Now they're kind of thinking this through. How do they go through this process of being like, how do I improve my user experience as a small to mid-sized business? Is there some steps I can take? Is there some best practices? I mean, what advice would you have for those people?
Well, there's a few ways to look at this. The very first one is figure out, and this is not a design or anything. This is just a business person, right? Know your competitor. If you don't have an exact list of who your competitor, if you don't know who your competition is, I think you got some other problems. Let's say you do, especially online, and you know what part of your customers are going to compare you because that's all they've seen. You better have that list, and you better pay close attention to what they're doing and where they're going. As a matter of fact, one of the tools that we have, Hexometer, basically goes out and looks at some of our clients' competitor sites and notifies us if anything has changed. If they install the plugin, if they change their slider, if they do whatever. Why? Because they want to know about it before everybody else. I mean, it's getting to that point.
And this is a tool anybody can use. What can you say that again? What is this tool called?
It's called Hexometer.
Hexometer.
There's several more out there it's just a bot that looks at it and says, this is what your site looks like at this particular stage, and we look, has anything changed? But it's not the tool. It's the fact that you need to be cognizant of where you fit into the whole space in terms of how you're being perceived, right? And there are a bunch of valuation firms out there, and you can do this for everyone. I remember there used to be a big ad agency or design agency, J. Doblin and Associates, and let me just show you what he did back then. he was responsible for redesigning the inside of JCPenney, right? And so really what he wanted to know was, well, who the hell am I competing with? And at that time, he was really competing with Sears. He was competing with a few other ones. Sears and Walmart, Kmart were their big competitors. And way on the other side, you had Macy's, right? So he drew this diagram and it says, how do people view me as in terms of a couple of different scales, right? And the first scale is professionalism or amateurish, expensive or cheap, right? And you can view yourself in those scales. And in other words, is trustworthy. Can I trust this? There is a guy that BJ Fogg was a guy that says, you know how when you meet a person, you just feel like you just trust them, and then when you get to know them, that trust either solidifies or it doesn't. Well, the same exact thing is happening when you see a website. And what he did is he spent years and years and years trying to figure out what makes one, in terms of color, design, all of that, what makes it trustworthy? What do you mean when you say professional, right? And so Jay Doblin basically looked at all of these and say, hey, how do we design the inside of our stores to be more? And what he found out is there was a big, big gaping hole between your typical Kmart and your Macy's, right? And what he decided, he pushed everything in terms of design and how the user experience within the store more towards Macy's. So now you had Kmart on the low end, and you had Macy's up on towards the high end, and you push Neiman Marcus even higher.
Yeah,
and there was a big void in there that says. And so what did he do? He threw away the automobile center. He's like, but it's not profitable, and he jazzed up there the fragrance center and the cosmetics and the women's apparel, and all of a sudden, he pushed much more profitability in there, because obviously those things have a much higher profitability rate than selling. Right.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, you have to do the exact same thing to your website, right? What is on your website that's frustrating? Get that out of there. Fix it, because that's damaging and damages to your future profitability. And then walk through some of the other things and say, hey, and you don't need anything except for you look at 3 websites and ask yourself, which one of these looks more trustworthy? Which one of these looks more professional? Which one? Because people, they'll say people judge you by the words you use and the clothes you wear.
Yeah.
That's how they judge your website. They make snap decisions within seconds, and you can make that snap decision too. And if you're looking at your own website and then you have your competitors and you go, oh my God, guess what you need to do next?
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. Now you mentioned that, Google, that you were kind of working with Google like early on. And I think and you also mentioned that UX, the user experience, again, that's what we're talking about today, is becoming more and more important. So I know there's a lot of companies out there, our clients included, and your clients, that are spending money on social media. They're spending money on Google AdWords, SEM. They're spending money on SEO. When these entities are sending people from Google to a website, or from Facebook to a website, and primarily Google here, how much is the user experience being taken into consideration on the platform? When you're spending money on SEO and you're not worried, you haven't done anything really to change your user experience, but you have all your, all this other stuff working for you. How much of a difference does it make in your SEO to have a really solid user experience on your site?
All right, that's another question we can talk about for a whole hour, but
we only have 10 more minutes.
Okay, I'll try to wrap that particular one in the next 2. Okay. Google has repeatedly said that UX is going to be a significant ranking factor, right? And so if you look at it from the easy perspective, they've already said this years ago, saying, if you don't have an SSL certificate, that little padlock, we're going to take that as a ranking factor. We're going to ding you for it. If you don't have responsive design, we're going to take that as a ranking factor. We're going to ding you for it. Responsive design is that the website looks completely different on the desktop versus a tablet versus a mobile. They went out and said that. And those are very, very simple to measure. Now they're looking at, okay, if your website is not fast enough, right? Time to first value. When you hit that when you click that button, when is that absolute down to the milliseconds when something starts to happen, something starts to get loading, and then when is that absolute when the whole page is finished, so I can time to interaction, when I can actually start clicking something, right? So they're looking at it from that perspective. They're also looking at it from target perspective, right? Are the buttons too small? And so remember, this is an algorithm that has, so you've got to train a bot to go in there and scrape through that stuff, look at the code and figure this stuff out. Speed obviously is very simple. But Google is even saying that this is more and more important. Why? Because the old ranking factors, such as links, all of that is much easier to gain. You can see Black Hat just buying links and all of that stuff like that. It's become so difficult, and that it's more like a whack-a-mole. So what they're also trying to do is they're trying to discourage that and says, you know what? It's much easier to go out and spend $20 on buying links. It's much harder to do it, to actually redesign your site. And the last thing is that when it's the stickiness, right? So when you've got a cool site, you want to explore, you want to look around, and you actually increase the probability of buying something. And therefore, that in itself, it's like a snowball rolling downhill. The more times people spend on there, the more time they're probably going to buy. And the more times they buy, the more time Google sees that as a ranking factor, right? Yeah. One of those things that you see on Google My Business, where if you Google it, it'll tell you the open hours all of there. And it'll also tell you people spend about, 8.7 minutes at this place. The longer you spend on the site, the more kudos you get from the UI UX perspective.
So this UX, I think this is something that a lot of people, I don't think they consider. I think maybe they think about it a little bit when they start to design their website or they start to kind of position themselves online. I don't think most companies and most business owners, even marketers for that matter, take the UX enough into consideration. And I think maybe it's probably one of the places where I think you can improve the most. I think you can find a lot of people in the world who really know how to drive traffic to your site. I think you can find a lot of people who know how to run really good Google AdWords campaigns or really good Facebook campaigns or Instagram or things like that. But I don't know if there's as many people out there who really know how to provide a UX experience that I think raises your whole game when it comes to digital marketing and really helps improve your overall, the overall profitability and success of your campaign. So I find that really interesting. And in the few minutes we have left, I just wanted to ask this too. A lot of the people that, again, mid-sized small businesses are using things like WordPress, they're using things like Squaresoft or even Wix. Are all these sites capable of providing the solid user experience that would pass with flying colors, or do we need to find somebody to do coding for us in order to get this right? What's your opinion on that?
The answer to that is largely no. There are some good templates out there that take into consideration your basic aesthetics, right? So if you do something that's really cookie cutter, you're selling widgets, right? There's a specific way to sell widgets that will get you 75% there. But other than that, now even your competitors are already probably there. So now you're at average at best. And that's where you see all of this functionality in terms of Elementor, what they're doing. Divi, these are all page builders that sit on top of it. Brizy Cloud now is going to go is saying, you know what, we don't even need WordPress because of the advantages that things like Webflow offers. Now, Webflow, you have to be a designer and you have to know pretty good HTML to use it. But it gives you a graphical user interface to start, so you don't have to code everything by hand. So the unfortunate part, it's getting more and more complex as more and more people start to do this, as Shopify and all of that. It makes it cheaper, but when you're using Wix and a few other ones, Squarespace, the customers that come to mind saying, we've tried Squarespace for a long time and we've outgrown it. And that's really what I hear, because now they're more intuitive. Their customers are definitely telling them what they want. They're seeing what their competitors are doing and they're going, yeah, I can't Squarespace to do this because this is a cool factor and I got to have it. And they realize that I got to have it is no longer just, I don't know, I'll give you, $500-$600. it's now worth $5, $6, $7, $8,000 because that functionality in the long run is just going to drive more UX, UI, more reusability, and
Yeah.
again, one thing will lead to another in a positive way.
Okay. Last question, I think, is going to be, we're throwing out a lot of numbers here. We're throwing out a lot of, what I think to some people would consider, fairly complicated things that maybe they hadn't considered before. My question to you is a practical one. So let's say I go and quote a website. Say I'm a mid-sized business or I'm a small to mid-sized business, and I've got a budget of about, I don't know, anywhere from $5,000 maybe up to $10,000 or somewhere around there to spend on a website. Maybe around $5 is probably what most small businesses are going to pay. Is that enough money to get where I need to go with this? Or do I need to have like a budget for my website and then a budget for a UX, expert like you to come in and consult in that design process and then do other things above and beyond that? Or am I going to be okay with about a $5,000 budget, just, making sure that I'm doing it right at the first time?
Well, that depends on the industry, but I'm just going to pick one or two that we work with. Like, let's say, here's a typical example. We all know plumbers, and we've all had plumbers, and we all went to
Right.
or heating and air conditioning, right?
Yeah.
The same applies. If you're getting into that business, you're gonna compete with your big behemoth heating and air conditioning places, and you're gonna compete with your local ones. The question is, do I want to compete with the Ferrari, or do I want to compete with just a really nice Camaro? And that's really what it involves with. And some, if you think that you're going to compete and like, there's a in our area, in the Chicago area, there's several very, very large and well-established heating and air conditioning companies and plumbing companies. You're not going to compete with them in terms of the money that they spend. So understand the race that you're getting into and say, if you want to compete with them, now you're talking $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 because to compete. But what you are going to compete is to say, hey, I might, maybe there's 3 local plumbers or local heating and air conditioning guys that are within 5 miles from me that I can
Right.
Definitely beat. And that's, again, know thy enemy, as they say. Know who you're competing with. And then we usually go into analysis. And there's clients who said, we looked at their websites. The first question we like is, give me your top 3 competitors. And I want to see if they know it off the top of their heads. If we'll get back to you, okay, give me 4 or 5 then. And we look at them and we look at what did they got. And we don't give out prices in terms of how much is the website. Well, this website, in order to compete with these 4 companies, is going to be X. If you want to compete with those 2, now you're in a different level. So we look at it that way.
Interesting. That's great. Well, I think it's a really good insight. I know we could probably talk about a lot this more, but I really want to let people know that, when you're doing your digital marketing campaigns, you're running a content strategy, you're doing paid advertising, you're doing SEO work, search engine optimization, you're doing search engine marketing through Google. All these things are very important, but that end user platform, whether it's a landing page or a website, taking into consideration the UX, the user experience, is going to make probably a bigger impact on your success than you probably had originally thought before. So it's something really interesting to consider. So consider that when you're doing this, because we want everybody to be successful. John, thank you so much for being here, man. We're going to have you back, and I should just not stop talking. I should just like turn it on and just let you talk forever. We really appreciate you being here. Everybody, thanks again for listening. Please subscribe to our podcast if you haven't before. I'm sure there's a subscribe now button somewhere on either Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening to. Please, we'd love you to subscribe and get, as we try to put out this content as regularly as we possibly can. Again, check out our book if you're looking for more help in this. There's a book called Stop Posting, Start Marketing. You can find that on Amazon. Check out our other episodes as well, where we talk about this and other topics that can help you be more successful when it comes to digital marketing. And until next time, this is Joe Sanders saying, stop posting, start marketing.